Good afternoon, friends. Today is Tuesday, and I want to present a summary of the article by Lena-Sofia Tiemeyer called Hope and Disappointment, the Judahite Critique of the Exilic Leadership in Isaiah 56 to 66. So without much further ado, let me start. Tiemeyer accepts Hans Barstad's proposal that Isaiah 40 to 55, these chapters that we call the second Isaiah, the Deutero-Isaiah, are not of exilic origin, but rather of Judahite origin. She also accepts that there is continuity between these chapters 40 to 55 and 56 to 66. And she accepts the gradual growth of the collection. That is, that chapters 56 to 66 were written by disciples of the people who had composed chapters 40 to 55. But nevertheless were critical of the return leadership that one finds in chapters 56 to 66. A little bit with regards to the history of research. Chapters 56 to 66 reflect a conflict between two groups, that of the speaker or speakers and his group. Sometimes we will use the singular here, sometimes the plural is the nature of this enterprise, and others. But who were these two groups? Scholars have two views, almost opposite of each other. First view is that chapters 56 to 59 and 65 to 66 are written by returned exiles, and their antagonists were those who had remained in Judah. The second view is that the protagonists are indigenous Judahites, and their opponents are returned exiles. A scholar named Brooks Schramm, whom Tiemeyer mentions and quotes, defends the first position, according to which Isaiah 40 to 55 is a product of and for the Gola, the exiles. Isaiah 56 to 66 was written by disciples of the authors of 40 to 55. He also says that the whole of the book of Isaiah could not have been put together by a group out of power and disenfranchised. Tiemeyer suggests that if Schramm's theory can be falsified, that is, if chapters 40 to 55 were not the product of nor for the Gola, then his argument is less convincing. Let me skip now to Paul Hanson, who is a defender of the second view. For Hanson, chapters 56 to 66 were written by heirs of Deutero-Isaiah. To this, Tiemeyer says, quote, he proposes that the texts in Isaiah 56 to 66 form an attack on the leading exilic priestly party and their program of restoration. This party sought to maintain the pre-exilic social and cultic structures and came to dominate the political and religious climate in post-monarchic Yehud. Their opponents, namely the authors of 56 to 66, were the heirs of Deutero-Isaiah. They had taken his message to heart and accordingly placed their hope in God's direct intervention on behalf of his people. Close quote, page 59 and 60. Tiemeyer builds on Hanson. According to that, the people responsible for various textual strands in 56 to 66 were trying to reform priestly practices and thus had rallied against priests who had failed to instruct the people on the ways of Yahweh, and also had engaged in social injustice against the disenfranchised. Third point is, what are the characteristics of the others? Right? These people that the author or authors of 56 to 66 are rallying against. At the outset here, Tiemeyer gives her conclusion. The people the prophet of 3rd Isaiah attacks were the leadership of Yehu. She then deals with a series of texts of pericopes, and I will list them, and I will mention the most important points in each of the in each of those texts that she mentions. 56 9 to 12. Tiemeyer concludes that 56 9 to 12 is not from the returning exiles towards the indigenous Judahites. You can actually read more about that in the summary, in the written summary that accompanies this video. 57 3 to 13 accuse the leaders of a series of cultic misbehaviors. Tiemeyer defends the unity of 56 9 to 57 13. Thus, the same author is responsible for the criticism in both 56 9 to 12 that we just saw 30 seconds ago, and 57 3 to 13. The leaders criticized in 56 9 to 12 are responsible for the behaviors in 57 3 to 13. Let me quote that. Tiemeyer says, quote, while 56 9 to 12 focuses on the leaders' failure to care for the people, 57 3 to 13 is centered on their failure to worship Yahweh exclusively in an acceptable manner, close quote, page 64. Isaiah 57 13b promises that those who serve Yahweh will inherit the land and the holy mountain. Thus, in Tiemeyer's view, the conflict in this latter part of the book of Isaiah was over land and the temple. The next text is 58 1 to 14. Tiemeyer says that three factors target the upper classes and the religious leaders. Number one, verses 2 and 3a address people who have or had daily contact with God, that is, religious professionals. 2. Verse 2 suggests a priestly group. 3. Quote, verse 3b implies that the addressees constitute people of power, as it refers to their business and their task of overseeing laborers. Close quote, page 65. Verses 4 to 14 confirm the identification made in verses 1 to 3, namely, the leaders who are involved in a series of felonies. They are people who in fact disregard the Sabbath in order to carry out their own interests, in verse 13. The next text is 59 1 to 8. I'm not going to say anything about that. The next two texts are 65 1 to 7, verses 11 and 12. From verse 5 on, one finds that the priesthood is the primary target. Quote, assuming that the surrounding verses address the same group of people, we find that the priests are accused of all kinds of unorthodox behavior, ranging from sacrifices in gardens and incense burning on bricks, verse 3, to ancestor worship, the eating of pork, verse 4, and the worship of deities other than Yahweh, verse 11, close quote, page 67. The last text is 66 3 to 6 and verse 17. According to verse 3, the others are priests. The conclusion that Tiemeyer draws from her analysis of these texts is as follows, quote, these passages together paint a picture of the target audience as a group of people with economic and cultic power over others, who neglect their duties towards their community and towards Yahweh. This suggests that the others in Isaiah 56 to 66 constitute the central political, economic, and religious leadership in Yehud, close quote, page 68. Point 4, who is the leadership in Yehud? She asks. The leadership in Yehud, who were they? Yehud is the name of the Persian province of Judah, Yehud. Then here she deals with Persian period texts such as Haggai Zechariah 1 to 8, Ezra and Nehemiah. So Persian period text, Haggai, Zechariah 1 to 8, Ezra and Nehemiah. Evidence from Haggai and Zechariah 1 to 8. These two texts report that Zerubbabel and Joshua came to Judah during the reign of Darius I. Moreover, they held the top two jobs, Zerubbabel in the civil realm and Joshua in the religious realm. Tiemeyer suggests that the leaders mentioned in Zechariah 7 verses 2 and 3 are of exilic origin. And you can read more in the summary. To conclude, she says, this is a quote, the priests and the other kinds of leaders in Haggai and Zechariah appear to be based in Jerusalem. While some of these leaders may have been of indigenous Judahite origin, it is reasonable to assume that the majority were returnees from the Babylonian exile. Close quote, page 71. Now Ezra Nehemiah. Both Ezra and Nehemiah are of foreign origin. Thus, evidence from Haggai, Zechariah 1 to 8, Ezra and Nehemiah suggests that many, I question most, leaders in post-monarchical Yehud were of foreign origin. Quote, with this in mind, we can conclude that the critique of the leadership in Isaiah 56 to 66 chiefly targeted people who had returned from Babylon rather than people belonging to the indigenous Judahite community. So in other words, in Tiemeyer's understanding, chapters 40 to 55, the so-called Deutero-Isaiah, Second Isaiah, were written in Judah. Similarly, the last 12 chapters, 56 to 66, or 11 chapters, were written in Judah by the disciples of the people that had written chapters 40 to 55. And these chapters, these individuals, are critical of the leaders, the people that actually had returned from Babylon and were now taking over the management, the institutions of Yehud, of Judah at this point. So let me just read the final paragraph. In Tiemeyer's system or interpretation, the Deutero-Isaiah was composed by Judahites in Judah, and chapters 56 to 66 are a critique of the leaders constituted by folks of Gola origin, that is the exiles. Quote, if chapters 40 to 55 are the product of the Judahite community, then it makes sense to identify the others in chapters 56 to 59 and 65 to 66 with the newly returned exilic leadership. The authors of Isaiah 40 to 55 anticipated the return of the exiles with joy initially. The later authors of 56 to 59, 65 to 66 expressed their disappointment with those same exiles with bitterness and grief. Close quote, page 73. That's all for this summary of Tiemeyer. Hope you had fun. It's a good article. I recommend you read it in the summer. Thanks so much. Feel free to leave comments and questions down here. Bye.